What's up, everybody? My name is Brad, and welcome back to another installment of Brad's Book Awards, where I'm covering my favorite books, the top books I read in the year 2020. These aren't books that necessarily came out in 2020. These are just books that I read last year in 2020. Last episode, I went over my top 10 favorite book covers. I'll link that up in the cards. I really enjoyed that. I think book covers are awesome. I love just really dope art on a book cover. So go check out that video for my favorite book covers of 2020. But for today, we're going to be talking about my top 10 horror novellas of 2020. Now, novella, usually it's based on how many words it is. I don't go in and count all the words for these. So I'm guessing anything around 140 to about 150 pages or so. I think all these on the list are under 150 pages except one. It was over by like just 5 or 6 pages, but it's my list, my rules. I'll do whatever I want to. So these are all books around 150 pages or less. So let's go ahead and dive into my top 10 novellas that I read in 2020. So starting things off, coming in at the number 10 spot is The Prisoners of Stuartville by Shannon Felton. This one's put out by Silver Shamrock Publishing. I read this one way back at the beginning of the year. But what I remember the most about it was just this dark, oppressive atmosphere, and the prison and like the town itself became characters. The town of Stuartville was a character all in its own right. And I like the sort of dark, mysterious entity, being, whatever it is, sort of lurking beneath the town. There's all these tunnels beneath the town. And it just felt like it was just pulling and sucking the life out of everybody in the town, just sort of down, dragging them down. It was bleak, it was dark. Dealt with some real world stuff, sort of like, towns left behind and some drug atmosphere and dealing with all that kind of stuff, opioid crisis and stuff. It was just really an overall really dark book, and I really enjoyed it. I think this might be a debut from Shannon. I'm not sure. But this is my number 10 pick for horror novella of the year, The Prisoners of Stuartville by Shannon Felton. So next up at number 9, this is also a book I read way back near the beginning of the year. And I had a digital copy, so I'll throw up a picture of the cover. But this is Where Dragonflies Dance by A.A. Medina. This is book 2 in his Claybrook County Chronicles series, but the books are all very loosely connected, so you don't have to read them in order. This is the first one I read. What I remember about this one, it was also a bleak tale. That's going to be a running theme, these bleak, dark, twisted stories. And there was something about this one towards the end. It was a twist that I had a very slight inkling that might be coming, and then it came, and I was disappointed that it came, but disappointed in a good way, because I didn't want that to be the case as to actually what was going on. But it was just a gut punch. It's gut wrenching. It's about a father, and he had an accident, and he doesn't remember anything about the accident, and his daughter disappeared the same time as his accident happened, and that's all I want to say about it. It has this mystery that unravels, but it was another, like I said, another bleak and dark, twisted story. Those are my favorite ones, but this has been number 9 on the list, Where Dragonflies Dance by A.A. Medina. And at number 8, this one actually made an appearance in last video, the Covers Award. This is The Resurrectionist by Michael Patrick Hicks, book 1 in the Salem Holly series. I love the mixture of historical fiction with cosmic horror in this one. This one takes place around the doctors' riots that actually happened in real life in New York. I don't remember the date. I think in the 1800s or very late 1700s. It deals with that, but it adds that cosmic horror twist to it, as you can tell by the cover, with all the tentacles coming out of the back of Salem's head. I really like Salem as a main character or protagonist. He's a black man in sort of the still very racist America. And we deal with the racial aspects of what's going on. There's these body snatchers, these resurrectionists, and they're stealing bodies from, seems like, only the black cemeteries. And Salem is set out to stop that from happening. And then, all the cosmic horror stuff gets mixed in. It's a wild, really brutal, action-packed ride. Has some great monsters in here. I don't want to give too much away, but overall, a really action-oriented cosmic horror story that has those historical fiction aspects in it that I really liked. I think, for me at least, elevated it above some other stories. I really like history, so the historical fiction stuff really played to my likes. And this is my number 8 pick, The Resurrectionist by Michael Patrick Hicks, book 1 in the Salem Holly series. And next up at number 7, this is a more recent read, but it's also another cosmic horror story, but it's vastly different than the number 8 entry, and that is The Worm and His Kings by Haley Piper from Off Limits Press. This is my first experience with Haley's longer work. I'd read a short story by her before. I really dug her writing style. It's very reminiscent, at least for this story, of Clive Barker. That might be just the sort of abstract cosmic horror stuff that's going on. What I really liked about this book, it's queer horror, queer fiction. I really liked the normalization of that relationship. It felt natural and felt like it was shoehorned in or someone checking a box just to meet a criteria. It was a very naturally told love story that just felt normal, and I really, really appreciated that about the book. And that's really the core of the story here. It's a love story sort of wrapped in this cosmic horror goodness. Definitely abstract, really out there sort of themes for the cosmic horror, which I really dug. But it's gritty and grimy. It takes place in New York City, and the sewers and subway tunnels and the underground of the city. I really dug it. I'm really looking forward to more from Haley Piper. This is my number 7 horror novella of the year, The Worm and His Kings by Haley Piper from Off Limits Press. And up next at number 6, and for this book, it is part of a series. So if it was standalone, it would probably be much higher on the list. But since it's part of a series, I dropped it down a little bit, not because I didn't enjoy it, but because it's part of a much longer story. But I'm talking about Lullaby by Daniel Barnett, which is book 2 in the Nightmare Land Chronicles series. I really, really love Daniel's writing style. And for this one sort of twisted the story as I thought it was going to go on its head and took me in a different direction, focused on a different character than I thought we were going to be focusing on for the entire series. But the Nightmare Land Chronicles, this is a post-apocalyptic world where the sun has gone out. We don't really know why. People are being put to sleep by this mysterious lullaby. And when you go to sleep, it's not like someone can shake you and wake you up. You are asleep. It's almost like a coma type state. And there's just mysterious, weird stuff going on. I like that it's not full of zombies or nuclear war and stuff. It's different, post-apocalyptic. But above everything else, Daniel's prose is absolutely beautiful. I love his writing style. And like I said, this is book 2 in the series, the Nightmare Land Chronicles. It's up to book 4 as of now, which is called The Flashlighters. I've got reviews for the first 3 books up already. Definitely check them out. But this is number 6 on my list. If you want to start the series, be sure you start with Volume 1, Nightfall. Lullaby is Volume 2. Sleepwalking is Volume 3. And the Flashlighters is Volume 4. Definitely check it out. But this is my number 6 pick for novella of the year. It's actually the shortest one in the series so far, coming in at right about 97 pages. And like I said, the character work in here was fantastic. I love that we focused on a different character and really developed them, and we're introduced to another very interesting character that gets really developed in book 3. But overall, a fantastic series so far. But this is my number 6 pick for novella of the year, Lullaby by Daniel Barnett, Volume 2 in his Nightmare Land Chronicles series. And coming in at number 5, we're halfway through the list, and what would a list be without some Chad Lutzke on there? So my number 5 pick is The Pale White by Chad Lutzke. This book, it is super dark, and it's about these 3 girls who are basically being held prisoner in this house as sex slaves. Some very, very dark content going on here. It borders on horror. It's right on the edge, right on the fence of horror. It sort of is, but isn't at the same time. But it's definitely no argument that it's very dark stuff. I love Chad's writing. It's so simple, but not at the same time. It's very hard to describe. But this one took, it's not really, it's sort of hinted at in the book. And when it was all said and done, I asked Chad if what I thought was true was, and he said I was right. And it just took the book to a whole other level of how dark it actually is. But it's about these girls in this house. They're trying to break out. One of them is really young. She's only like 10 or so, and she's never even really been outside. I think she was basically grew up her whole life. This is all she knows. It's very sad and poignant and striking and just brutally dark. But yeah, Chad Luskey, if you haven't checked out his work, definitely check out something by him. The Pale White is a fantastic place to start if you're really into some very dark fiction and subject matter. But it's not overly like detailed in anything like that. You know, he's not going into these nasty details about the sex and stuff itself. It's more off page. You just know what's going on. It's better, you know, not shown. You know what he's talking about without him having to show it. That's how great his writing is. It still has that same impact and punch without him having to show you all the gory details about what's going on. Fantastic writer, great book. My number 5 pick for novella of the year, The Pale White by Chad Luskey. Next up at number 4 is Dear Laura by Gemma Amor. This is another one I read way back at the beginning of the year. It's definitely stuck with me. I really loved Gemma's writing style. It was just smooth and beautiful and poetic. This one, it's a story about this girl, and at the time her boyfriend gets in this van with a stranger, and she watches him drive off, and she never sees her boyfriend ever again. It's like a kidnapping story. And one day on her birthday, she receives a letter in the mail from this supposed kidnapper asking Laura to do some certain things. And if she does, she might get hints and clues as to the location of her missing boyfriend. And as you can see by the cover, you know, things aren't going to go well. It progresses as the story goes along, asking Laura to do more dangerous and darker things as the story goes on. It was sort of unique, and I'd really never read anything like it at the time. I really loved it. It sort of is Laura as an adult, and it sort of flashes back to when she's younger, getting these letters and flipping back and forth until those timelines sort of meet up near the end. I dug it. Again, running theme for this whole video, bleak and dark and gut-wrenching at times, and just really beautiful writing. This is my number 4 pick, Dear Laura by Gemma Amor. And we're down to my top 3, and really all 3 of these are fantastic books. Any of them could be number 1 on anyone's list. It was very hard to narrow them down, whittle them down to a 1, 2, and 3. But at number 3, this was my very first read of 2020, and this is True Crime by Samantha Klesnick, put out by Grindhouse Press. This book is dark, and it's sort of the, you know, what makes a monster a monster? Is it the circumstances that they're brought up in, or are they born like that? It really dives into that kind of stuff. We follow, what was her name? Susie and her brother Lim. They sort of go on this cross-country murder spree after dealing with just her awful, heinous mother and the things that she did to both Susie and Lim. And we really dive deep into the sort of psychosis and mind of Susie. It's very disturbing. It has sort of a, I guess, tongue-in-cheek sort of advertisement on the back of the book for Ketchum Plumbing. And I have never read Jack Ketchum, but a lot of people hearken this book to Jack Ketchum and the Girl Next Door, that kind of gruesome brutality and just disturbing book. Fantastic read, very dark and bleak. And I keep using those same words over and over again, but that's just how they are. I love this book. I can't wait to read more from Samantha. If, you know, this is her debut, if this is anything to go by, she has a very bright writing career ahead of her. This is my number 3, True Crime by Samantha Klesnick from Grindhouse Press. So next up at number 2, and this easily could have been number 1. If you ask me tomorrow, 1 and 2 might flip back and forth. Ask me the next day, they'll flip back. Both 1 and 2 are excellent books. But for number 2, I'm picking Spungonian by John Bowden. Out of everybody on this list, John's writing is definitely the most sort of lyrical and poetic. I love his writing style. He is a wordsmith. He is a master craftsman when it comes to putting words together. And I really like the sort of juxtaposition of the different sort of genres that are mixing up in this book. It's about this trucker, so we're, you know, in these big rigs with, you know, the exhaust blowing out and traveling these forgotten back highways of America, mixed with these greasy sort of roadside diners and, you know, shady characters and whatnot. But it's also mixed with this almost fantastical elements, these mystical elements, this magical realism type stuff, bordering almost on fantasy, but not quite there. And again, just his storytelling and the way he's able to paint a picture in your head, paint a scene in your head with his lyrical, sort of writing style. It's genius is what it is. He is a lyrical genius when it comes to putting pen to paper and writing these stories. John Bowden, if you haven't checked him out, please, please, please check him out. He is a fantastic writer. He's definitely underappreciated. More people, everyone needs to be talking about John Bowden and his writing. This is the second thing I've read by him. I read Out Behind the Barn, the novella he did with Chad Lutzke, and I think that might have been my favorite novella last year. And he's at the number 2 spot this year. So please, definitely check out John Bowden's work. This is my number 2 pick for novella of the year. It is Spungonian by John Bowden. So coming in at number 1, my number 1 horror novella of the year. I'm going to have to take a sip of bourbon for this one. So start the drum roll. So my number 1 horror novella of the year is Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. This is another one put out by Off Limits Press. This one is just a masterclass in grief and loss and despair, and what you would be willing to do, to the lengths you'd be willing to go through to bring a loved one back or see them one more time, have one more conversation with them. It's about this mother, Chris, and the tragic and sudden passing of her adult son. I think he's around 20 or so. He gets killed in a car accident, and just the utter, destruction of her world as she knows it, and what she would be willing to go through, the lengths she would be willing to go through to get one last chance to be with her son once again. It is very disturbing, but it's something you don't want to read. It's a gut punch. It's super emotional, but it's a fantastically written story. Laurel really does a great job of capturing all these emotions in such a short book. It is like 115 pages or so, 107 pages. It's such a roller coaster ride for how short of a book it is, but the characters are great, and you can't believe what is going on. You don't want to believe what's going on. Maybe not everything is what it seems, but I don't want to say anything more about it there. But yeah, if you want a tragic book, definitely pick up Crossroads by Laurel Hightower by Off Limits Press. This is my number 1 horror novella that I read in 2020. So that's it. That's the end. Those are my top 10 horror novellas that I read in 2020. You can't go wrong with any book on this list. They are all fantastic reads. They were all 4 stars and above. The last few were definitely 5-star reads. Definitely check them out if you haven't already. But that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you for spending your time with me. Again, my name is Brad. Got a tiny swig of bourbon left. So cheers, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.